There we are. We're live. And with tea in hand, good morning. Hello, everybody. Good morning for me. It may not be morning where you are. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author. And welcome to my channel. You are on BookTube. So I am here twice a week talking books, slinging fiction and nonfiction and readathons, and trying to get people more involved with the world in a positive way. So today is our final Black Authortuber Readathon featured stream. So this month, 4th annual Black Authortuber Readathon, and each Sunday I've been shouting out a Black Authortuber, and I know a good handful. So it was fun to have people on the channel talk about their books, their channels, their dreams and hopes, and experiences. And today I'm featuring CM Lockhart, and that is her channel. So she's not coming on today for the live stream, but I will be talking about her channel and her books, and the links are down in the description. So Sunday is her day off. So unfortunately, we don't get to see her lovely face, but definitely check out the channel. And I'll sing her praises in just a second. I did want to say for all the folks that we have 1 week, and I'm going to extend it a few days because my wrap up and the drawing for the giveaway is going to be on March 7th, the first Friday of March. So if you start a book now this week, one of the Black Authortubers in the spreadsheet, which you can see at the bit.ly link below, you still have plenty of time for a short read, for a romance, for a fantasy, maybe, to fit that in and be part of the giveaway. So there's only a couple folks in there who are eligible so far. So you have a good chance to win all 4 Authortubers books, and I'm going to send them to you. If you're in the US, they will be paperbacks. If you're international, then they will be ebooks because budget. But yeah, I just thought that would be fun and entice some people to put their name down and try a new thing, hopefully. So, but for these 4 Sundays, I've been sort of pairing my usual content with the questions with the authors. And so I had an AuthorTube focused one with an author interview. I had a tag that I did together with Tiffany. I had a little bit talking about policy stuff for my truth and reconciliation theme. So I've been trying to massage each of my normal content streams with a Black Authortuber present or featured. And the one that's left is talking about readathons. So I'm going to talk a little bit about readathon update today and mix that in with all my recommendations and unreads. So the title is Recs and Unreads. And we're going to go through, because it's Black History Month, Black authors only. So we'll talk about that today. And just to say hello, since I haven't looked over at the chat tab yet, hello to Catpaw and welcome. Hello to Mojo and welcome. Hello, hello. Eva, hello, friend. And gosh, I should read something. I actually have, is it within hand distance? No, it is over there, of course. I am reading Stella by Starlight on your recommendation. Finally. So I'll finish it before the end of the month, but currently maybe a quarter of the way through. So excellent recommendation. And middle grade books are very, very welcome. So jump on in. Again, that is the link. And what I thought I would do first is do the shout out for Chelsea. And this is my motto, read instead. So you'll find me reading lots of books and watching lots of YouTube channels. That is my mode of operation. So CM Lockhart is Chelsea, and that's how we know her here on YouTube. And her channel is called Written in Melanin. Now, I think I learned about Chelsea when I was first starting 2020, maybe 2021. And she did one really cool thing that meant, pro, this like broadcast to me at the beginning. And that is that she has curated the Melanin library on her website. So her very noble, principled project that also helps her community, which is lovely to see, is curating books by Black authors and offering them in her website as like the main thrust of the website. So I thought that took a lot of time and effort and ongoing maintenance and promotion. And so like her money is where her mouth is kind of feeling. So if you check out her channel, she will sometimes have links to the website to find authors. You can put indie books, you can recommend them for the site. And so that was like one of the first things that was like, wow, okay, she's really like walking the walk. Very impressed. Outside of that, the first series that I became aware of was the Melanin Chat. And that is a live stream, I think once a month. I think it's like evolved over the years. And I actually came when it was a substitute host. So the co-hosts that she talks with for the podcast kind of conversation rotate in and out. It's normally between the reads, I think, but it was a different gal when I was first watching. And so I got used to that and then had to switch back. So it's a lovely way to meet other people because she does have different co-hosts and guests. And basically, it's like taking on trending topics. Now, I've followed some very big channels that take on trending topics and give their take on them and show a little research and show a little, show their work and their opinions and, for debate purposes with someone else or just like their take on those trending topics. But the bigger channel sort of lost me because it seemed like it was really just trying to get me to watch because it was grabbing a headline. And that is not the feeling that I get from Chelsea at all. So I have stuck with the Melanin Chat and absorbing the things that she talks about because I feel like it's timely because it's a trending topic, but it's also like there's deeper thought going into it. It's like, this is my experience in the publishing industry. And so this is why I can speak on this. Or, this is our community and these are what I've heard opinions throughout the years. And so this is why this is the reality that you should look into. So I really value that. And my onlooking observing in the chat is kind of something that I get to explore in terms of comfort or discomfort. I will definitely comment and engage because I want to help her channel get more visibility and engagement for the algorithm. But I also think those thoughts to myself before I say things because I'm learning other opinions that I haven't been exposed to in my life sometimes, or, in the specific publishing context often. And so I find that really valuable for me to interrogate some of the things that I haven't had aired out before. And also just lovely to watch her sometimes rant, sometimes vent, sometimes really connect with people in the chat, often get great recommendations for something that she's looking for. So it's just awesome. So definitely recommend the Melanin Chat. It might be monthly, it might be bi-monthly, it might fluctuate, but when you can subscribe to Written in Melanin, you will definitely see those pop up on Fridays. What else? She does writing sprints, and again, the proness, the wafting off of the air of a pro is unmatched. So I think Chelsea uses one of the more involved, not StreamYard, not me. Like I'm borrowing Leslie's profile setup kind of thing to broadcast today. But Chelsea uses like a class above that is actually you have to do the work and figure something else out. I mean, StreamYard was its own figuring things out, but it's OBS, I think. And so she's got the background, she's got the music, she's got the tappy sounds, she's got the chat on the screen. It's all very nice. And so yeah, cozy, lo-fi music, very chill. And you see her doing her work, which she is able to do, which is hats off. And so if you're one for writing sprints, add her schedule to yours and you definitely have fun joining in and being productive there. So that is another thing to recommend her channel for. And she does regular videos. She's definitely, like I said, the air of the pro wafts off the channel. She's got regular videos, the consistency, and I find that they have a balance of practical advice for authors and visionary sort of critique. So the type of thing that I love to hear people talk about, which is this is something that's wrong. I'm calling it out when I see it. And this is what I think would help the solution, advance a solution, and, doing it with some humor and goodwill and examples. And I love that. So, um, yeah. So those are some, like, I think solid leads why you should subscribe to Written in Melanin, and that's just the channel. So there's also her books. So I am currently past halfway. I think just before halfway is when I started getting really gripped. This is her first book, We Are the Origin, and so far it is a duology. It's on the thumbnail because we've got We Are the Origin and We're Dying Gods, which I have in ebook form. So I'm starting the series. And the other book that is on the thumbnail is her most recent release. And the book that is not on the thumbnail, but just came out last week, is Magic in the Melanin, which is an anthology that she organized with many other Black artists, collaborators, like I said, artists, so writers and illustrators. It's all very cool. And so watching that come to life on the channel has been glorious to witness. So it was crowdfunded. It was just published or released. And yeah, so get in it. I would say about her books, what I'm learning from We Are the Origin is that we've got like sizzling character development. I really like the reasons people have for doing things. We've got journeying, the typical fantasy journey. We've got the gathering of the crew that I am just witnessing now, and like humor, and I think a feeling of like specialness. So it's one of the things that Chelsea sometimes talks about on her videos and in her chats, live stream chats, is the like Black books written for a Black audience, and being really intentional about that. And so what I'm seeing in this book is what I interpret as some of the beautiful things in Chelsea's life experience, as well as some of the things that are like feeling very unfair and unjust, but twisted into fantasy background. So those have not been unraveled yet in my like just past halfway in the book, but I'm excited to see, based on my knowledge of her background, what happens with those, like the gods and the balance and the spies, and like really cool setup of the world. So recommend, if anyone wants to finish it with me for the readathon, check out that spreadsheet and drop your name in and we can have a chat, because I would love that. We've got, yes, Eva saying I liked Stella by Starlight a lot, which is the middle grade read I'm currently started. Leslie says, here, you were the inspiration for just going with this because it was up today. I'm not sure why. We've got a Dee here, Deirdre, right? Not Deidre, but Deirdre. So Bronco reading, welcome, welcome. And we got a Jim. Hey, y'all, from Georgia. So welcome, everybody. I have just got done singing Chelsea's praises to the heavens. So definitely check her out. Subscribe to the channel. Read a book. Buy an ebook. Subscribe to the Patreon that Chelsea does. The links that I have in the description include, what do they include? They include her newsletter if you want to sign up for that. They include her YouTube channel, of course. Definitely subscribe for free. The Melanin Library that I described first, where there's all these indie books by people of color. And finally, her Patreon, where you have basically the same but different levels of support. So definitely encourage that. And like I said, you can still participate in the Black Authortuber Readathon. Let me pin it. Let me pin it. Wait, I didn't put it in the chat yet. So it's clickable. There we go. So if anyone wants to join, there's a week and change, and definitely able to read a book in that amount of time. So we'd love to have you. And pin. All right. The link is now pinned in the chat. So for anyone watching on replay, check it out. Okay. So I introduced me, I introduced the readathon. I told you all about the giveaway on March 7th, and I shouted out Chelsea's channel and books. So now for the readathon information. Let's see. Doop. We're going to move on to the examining the piles of books in my vicinity. So first, we're going to go with my recommendations for Black authored books, which are what I combed from my shelves that I have in physical existence, right? And we're going to start with one thing I discovered when I did this, which is that most of the books that I have in my possession are nonfiction that I loved enough to keep are nonfiction, which is interesting. So if we're going to be examining our libraries, examining our biases, I noticed this. And so I'm thinking, interesting. My first conclusion about my own reading habits is that maybe that's because I feel like I don't know a lot about the Black community. And so I feel like reading nonfiction will get me up to a level where then I can understand the level people are at in fiction, because sometimes it goes over my head and, then you don't appreciate the books as much as you could have. So that's my theory. Does that sound like it holds water? I don't know. Does it sound like it's working? I don't know. But we're going to look at recommendations for favorites in nonfiction. So not losing this pile to gravity here and not disturbing the cat. What do I have? Yes. Beanie Bean. Ooh. Okay, so there's some tears here. I'm just trying to be picky. Nonfiction. Books I loved. Black authors. This is the first one that pops up, which I've talked about before, obviously, because I've reviewed it before. It's called Black Ghost of Empire, The Long Death of Slavery and the Failure of Emancipation by Chris Manjapra. And this came out a couple years ago. So I actually listened to this on audio from Libro.fm, and we love Libro.fm for audiobooks. Shout out to Libro. And then I found the book in the thrift store and was like, yes, yes, now I can have my own copy. I haven't reread it yet, but I transferred all my notes to Storygraph, I'm pretty sure. There were some basic truths in this that I had not encountered before. And one is in the title, The Failure of Emancipation. So the difference, the clear difference, and maybe y'all know this already, but in case you don't, emancipate comes from a word meaning to let go of, to release from the hand, man's, Latin or Greek or something. I didn't study any of those languages, but that image of releasing is really a powerful image of power dynamics, meaning I have the power, I choose to let go, rather than abolish, which is an A plus a word, which means like the opposite of, or the elimination of, which means doing away with something and destroying it, right? And so abolition is a different goal than emancipation. And what did we end up with in many of our empires? Emancipation is what moved first. So not the ideal. And that has colored, not to make it a pun, the end results, like how things rolled out, how things were implemented, how things were deployed, resources and such. So that just like one point is like, interesting. And that influences legal language and then the laws that are used to justify certain treatment. So that is just a taste of things that were very clearly laid out with lots of examples. The other thing I got from this book is the comparison. So we've got the British Empire, which we were part of, and then our own empire, which obviously still goes on. And we can compare that to the French Empire and the Spanish Empire. And I didn't study slavery in those empires specifically. So I thought that was a really valuable point. And so yeah, I just found it a very illuminating book, very compelling, great examples, researched, and like, why isn't this at the top of everyone's list? I am mystified. So yeah, hard recommend. Nonfiction favorites. Continuing. Yes. So in an effort to try to get out of just history and politics for this category, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Mwah. So she edited All We Can Save, which is a lovely sort of compilation of climate works. But this I got just on the strength of her name being the editor. Best American Science and Nature Writing for 2022. And Ayanna Eliza is her handle on Instagram. She is showing up every day to continue climate activism, which I find very admirable. A scientist, a writer, an activist, and a Black woman who knows her stuff and like knows how to move people. And I love that. So in terms of science and nature, there's a very wide ranging collection of writings in here, and I found them almost all fascinating, from the stuff that I found gross to the stuff I didn't know about to the stuff I was like, how does this relate to my life? It just did a very good job of relating these new discoveries to everyday practical thinking. And so that's what I have come to expect from Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Loved her in this position of power and authority, and can't wait to see more from her. So definitely highly recommend for something that's not history or politics if you are in the science and nature theme. Realm. How about realm? So I love that. Request it at your library. See if they have it. Engage with these books. It helps them and their authors do well. Nonfiction favorites. This is going to be a long one, guys. So pause if you have to and come back, or whatever you need to do. There we go. Recent, very well received book, How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. Now, this is another one that I listened to from Libro.fm and then bought the book afterwards. So I haven't read it yet, but I loved it so much in the audio version that I needed my own copy to mark up. And so I have still to do that. The subtitle is A Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America. And what I found very compelling about this and what spoke to me is that he visits different places. Clint Smith. I read his poetry book first, so I liked his vibe first. And then I saw that he had a nonfiction book about history and listened to it. And he visits different places that are significant in the history of America and its slavery past, and how it has not yet reckoned with it. I saw a great sketch just this morning on TikTok about Germans and how they were world champions at confronting their past. And there's a very long, complicated German word for that, which made me laugh. But it was satire. And it was talking about how, you know, it's uncomfortable to confront your past. It's uncomfortable to see how you benefited from your ancestors, you know, inaction or privileges. But it's important to do it because sticking with the same system and its legacy is not going to get us anywhere better than where we were then. That works for the climate, that works for equality and, you know, mortality outcomes. So if you don't understand that, maybe you should read this book. Like I said, he goes to significant places that memorialize history. So he goes anywhere from like a prison in the South to a museum that people visit, and you hear talks about founding fathers that were slave owners, to West Africa and the Door of No Return. Just like thinking about how academics have queried this topic, as well as how tourists interact and engage with this topic, and how it affects people and him, Clint Smith in particular, personally. I remember there's a lot more that was going on, but like favorite recommend, memoir, history. Oh, and New York City, like a walking tour. Yeah, is all good. So please engage with these books, boost them up. Let's see. Classic backlist here. We've got a Bell Hooks book, and the one that like gelled with me the most so far is Where We Stand, which is a small book, short book, and it's about Bell Hooks' take on class matters. So this is obviously vintage. What year is it? Oh no, 2000. So, Bell Hooks has important things to say. Um, and I think she travels from like older statistics to more modern ones to sort of draw the lines. I should really do some more Bell Hooks reading. But this is the one that first grabbed my attention, and I did read the paperback, and it's already highlighted, but I think oh yeah, I actually used pencil in this one. So, yeah, I think Bell Hooks did a really good job of meeting people where they are in terms of this being digestible for the mainstream media. So perhaps not Black authored books for a Black audience, but an important topic for mainstream America to confront and digest and like take action on. Hold on. I'm glad we can mutually inspire each other. Yes, in books, in discussions, in reading goals, and in StreamYard formats. Why not? And the last one I have in my possession is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. So actually, the one that the one that I felt more compelled by was Warmth of Other Suns, but that was a library book, and this is the one that I bought. Cast: The Origins of Our Discontents. And this is the one that I think that got more play in the press. So Cast, obviously, or not so obviously, is something that I always associated with India because the language, the term actually I came into contact with only in the context of India with like the rigid caste system. But what Isabel Wilkerson argues very persuasively is that other places have the caste system as well. And that's part of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of white supremacy. And so this is history, but it's also sociology, and it's also qualitative research. So personal interviews with people and experiences that have been written down. And she does a great job of that. And Warmth of Other Suns, following 3 different directional migration patterns. So I really liked that. And this one, obviously, I did sticker it up, and you can see that like I was engaging with the text. So favorite nonfiction, sociology, sort of modern topics, and really great writer Isabel Wilkerson. Let's see. Take a break for my voice. So then I've got books that I've read that I also liked, but weren't my favorites, or that are fiction. So we'll continue with nonfiction, because I think I want to read these again. We've got Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, and that is interesting that they spell out Berghart instead of B. This is definitely an older book. As you can see, copyright 1961, originally by 1953. So old vintage edition. And I think the conversation has moved on, but it's interesting to see where it has evolved from. And it's a seminal work, The Souls of Black Folk. So for people who are trying to for historical fiction writers, actually, if you want to get back into like 1900, which is when he started writing and researching, I think, there's a starting point, which is interesting to see. I find it hard to read older books on the topic because of the language and because of, I think the way that they had to be very, very academic sounding to be taken seriously is sort of off-putting for me. I think later writers towards the end of the 20th century were more direct, more frank, more practical in their speech, which made it more accessible to understand. But there's definitely context that I lack for historical academic discussions. And so I will need to read this again, having done lots more reading. Then I've got this lovely find. So Zora Neale Hurston, who you will hear about again in a second, I got her nonfiction. So she was a anthropological researcher, and this Tell My Horse is a book about the practices of voodoo and hoodoo, especially in the Caribbean. So she went there, did research, wrote it up, Interactive Societies, sort of talked about her thoughts on this, and first published in 1938. Jamaica and Haiti. So I thought that would be interesting to read. And it was interesting, but it was very much a feeling of following someone's words and knowing that you're not getting the sort of whole background set of the play, like watching Shakespeare sometimes. So again, have read it, we'll probably come back to it, which is why I've held on to it. And I'm hoping the more I read in the genre and the more information I gather, the more rich sort of contextualization will bubble up when I reread. So go Anthro. Go social sciences. Then we have another giant name, Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde, Essays and Speeches. So this is nonfiction. It's called Sister Outsider, this collection, and it's pretty famous enough for a reprint, which this is. And I definitely have heard Audre Lorde quoted in many contexts, and I feel like, again, giant of a name. I want to read more of their work. I'm pretty sure Leslie is way ahead of me on this one. I feel like they're in the same category for me as Bell Hooks in terms of associations, very counterculture, very ahead of their time, very intersectional. And there's lots to mine from their work now that we have like different lenses and maybe more understanding. So I need to read another work because this one I felt it was the 80s, it was the early 90s, it was conferences, it was academic. I think I can probably find something that would connect with me more in her catalog. So if you have suggestions, please make them in the chat. And then finally, something I found sort of off the cuff. This is a more recent book and a less famous name, but it's called Trace by Laurette Savoy. Memory, History, Race, and the American Landscape. PEN Literary Award finalist. That's what that, I know Ven hates this sticker that's not a sticker says. But basically, this is the classic Margaret book where someone is sort of in a memoirish way talking about their exploration of a topic or an experience from several angles. So memory is questioned, which gets a little hard for me because I don't my understanding of memory and like the biological part of it is somewhat shaky. So she talks about memory, and I feel like I don't often get a lot of the scientific discussion, but then also race and history and personal experiences, and in a very questioning way. So if that sounds like it's up your alley, talking about history, talking about place, talking about memory, and interpretation. I liked it when I read it, and I feel like it needs a reread as well. But probably now that I've read more on the topic, especially how the word is passed, and would understand more of it. So yeah, context, friends. Nita says, I need to read Cast. Ooh, I liked Warmth of Other Suns better, but this felt like a giant, like in the press. So yeah. Yeah. Tiffany's here. Hello. So I've just gotten through my famous nonfiction favorites, and then we've only got 2 here that I have in physical land that are fiction. that I loved enough to keep, which is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, who I just talked about for her nonfiction. Lots of people talk about this one, so I won't dwell on it too long. It's a May of the Moderns book, which is when I finally got around to reading it because I didn't read it in school. And as Mr. Sosotris just described in his excellent video of a few days ago, it's a Black woman who is going through different experiences based on her background, and basically it's a few different marriage prospects and different treatments, and her waking up to the fact that she deserves so much more. And like it comes full circle at the end, and there's like really just brilliant writing about self-discovery. So I loved it. It was accessible to me, and I had a buddy read on it with another friend from May of the Moderns. And would just encourage anyone who doesn't know where to start here. Loved it. And the other May of the Moderns read that I was searching out diverse reads for, because I know that historical books, they're harder to access. Not only like nonfiction, yes, because it's academic, because they felt the need to, pile evidence on perhaps, but fiction I find even harder to connect with, historical diverse fiction, because they feel the need to portray the reality, and the reality is really harsh. So part of that is like, it's hard to witness, which is a crybaby defense, I understand. But part of it is just like, it's violent on the page, and it's just like, it's a lot to take. So this is the one that I read at the beginning of May of the Moderns. Charles W. Chestnut is the author, and the book is called The Marrow of Tradition. It's from like 1901. I really like the painting on here. It's about a coup in North Carolina that actually happened, and it's a fictionalized version of it. It's about a community that has a caste system where the Black and white populations depend on each other. Well, it's more one way, but you know what I mean. And but the segregation leads to some very interesting pathological relationships. And I felt that this was accessible in terms of there's relationship building, there's family level dynamics, there's people who live together. So like servants and people. Usually you would say servants and masters, but that sounds wrong here. So but yeah, so it's a Southern context. It's post-Civil War, but it's like showing the legacies and the clear castes and the loyalties. And it was just a really interesting. So if you like historical works, it's not historical fiction because it was written at the time. If you like classics, there we go, and are looking for a diverse read, definitely recommend Charles Chestnut, as The Marrow of Tradition fills that bucket. Okay, so those are all the recommendations. And if you're new here, like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm trying to promote Black Authortubers as well as Black authors, from classics to famous folks, and get them some traction on my channel. So here's my question at this point, since we're like almost halfway. I told you it was going to be a long one. Question of the day is, have you read any of these famous authors? And if you have, who is your go-to like famous Black author recommendation? Because I'm going to start with some other recent names and hopefully get their names on your radar. No, I'm going to go with famous ones that I haven't read yet. That's right. I wrote this down, but there's so many parts today that I'm mixing up myself. Okay, so here are the famous ones that I have not read. So we're moving from recommendations, loved books, good enough to keep and reread books, and into famous names that have been sitting on my shelf from a little to a long period that I want to read and have not yet. So maybe you're going to give me a recommendation based on one of these. So recent book, Janelle Monáe, The Memory Librarian. Is it a collection? Yes. And Other Stories of Dirty Computer. So I was confused by this because it's an album, but she's a singer, but she's like all around talented and has this sort of co-written short story. And I haven't read it yet. I've probably had it for 2 years. And like many books on my shelf, I'm looking for an excuse to read it. It's a recommendation from Beth Ann, my friend Beth Ann Broninga-Sokolar. She read it and loved it. So I'm going to get to how we read more books in a little bit. But for now, we're just going to go through famous names I haven't read and which ones do you want to hit me over the head with by saying that I should read them right away. This one is an old recommendation from Bree at Locked Booktition. It is The Street. It is a classic from Anne Petrie. And, you can tell it's a classic by this cover. Let's see the year on this book. Printing history, 1946. And this, I think, is from 1964. So classic, almost Me of the Moderns, but not quite. And that's probably why I haven't read it yet. But I've heard great things about Anne Petrie and her other books. Famous name, classic, giant of the genre, fiction, haven't read, need to read. What do you think? I have another nonfiction from Zora Neale Hurston, which is very tempting. It's a reprint because she was very popular recently. And Dust Tracks on a Road. This is actually a memoir. So not anthro research, but a memoir. And she had several. So do I repeat or do I do new author? Like it's hard. You can't read them all at the same time. I try to read everything at the same time, but I can't. We've got another giant name, James Baldwin. I picked this up, another popular author recently, Dark Days. This is, what is it? Searing essays, blending intensely personal with the political to envisage a better world. So I think this is kind of like listening to him talk in the media, which I love. So I haven't read his fiction or his memoirs. I've read I Am Not Your Negro, which is a modern sort of pastiche of his words and the artist's like modern interpretation. So I wasn't really sure. I got this to try to get back to his own words. That wasn't Bean. That was something with the house. Okay. But like haven't read it yet. Super small and haven't read it yet. Maybe I need to get on that. Okay, this is one that I was very excited to get a copy of. Walking with the Wind by John Lewis, who recently passed away, giant of the activist space. It's a memoir of his time as a younger man with the civil rights movement. And I feel like it's going to be a lot of detail. It's quite a thick one of the history of 1950s and 60s and really good. But I think I got a deal on it because it's Broken Spine, which is fine. I love my books to bits as well. But I want maybe someone to read this with. I don't know when. And I'll be answering my own question in a second. So, come at me. We've got Women, Race, and Class by Angela Y. Davis, who I haven't read yet. This is I think the foundational one. I'm definitely want to read it. It's been on my shelf. This is one of the newer ones, like not that long, like a year or less. But I was excited to get this. It is new, but I haven't read it yet. We've got Octavia Butler, who I haven't read yet, which is embarrassing. I got Kindred. That's my head. Yeah, that's the bonehead. I haven't read it yet. There are lots of choices. She has a lot of books out, and everyone I know loves her. Leslie's done a deep dive, I think, and I haven't read it yet. And then, if Dee Dee is still here, this is the one she's going to bonk me on the head with. The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Pitts Jr., winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So, like, World War II, African-American history, fictionalized, like, it sounds awesome. I have this down on my read in 24 hours, one over 500-page book, and I just haven't, gussied up my courage to devote a day because things have just been flying at me for the past 8 months of work yet. So those are all the famous names. Let's see if you've answered the question. Anyone out there and berated me. Tiffany says, we just talked about my love of that book. Oh, you're going to have to see, I do these you're going to have to tell me which book you're talking about because now I don't know which one. Jocelyn says, good morning. Welcome, welcome. Tiffany says, for fiction, there's always Beverly Jenkins. Yes, Ms. Bev. And Toni Morrison. Yes, she is an acquired taste. And I think I'm biased by having read Beloved first and in high school before I had any understanding. And the intensity of that and like the academic environment was sort of a weird place. So I'm a little scared. But have I read any other Toni Morrison besides her poetry? I don't know that I have. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe should I go for fiction or should I go for memoir? I don't even know. Jocelyn says, I've heard of Ann Petrie. Yeah. Tiffany says, nonfiction, I'd recommend W.E.B. Du Bois, very socially relevant. You may not have caught him in my nonfiction that I went through. Jocelyn Carter, I've never read any of her books, though. Ann Petrie. Okay, so we're in the same boat. Monique says, love Beverly Jenkins. Hey, I had to give away my book. Yeah, moving as much as Mojo does, I can understand the necessity, but the knife in the heart, for sure. I think I have a couple of hers as ebooks, so download them now so you have them so that when they get banned, you still have them. Just saying. Not her books. Yeah, I meant to say I haven't read it. Ann Petrie's. Yeah, gotcha. I'd read the John Lewis book. Oh, I'd read. Oh, okay. Yes. All right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a sticky note on here with your name on it so you can't take it back. Think of a month or two when you are ready to dive in, depending on your publishing schedule. I know it's very booked. So I will put Tiffany on this one. Yay! Yay! Okay, give me a month or two time frame and we'll buddy read this. That sounds fun. Thank you. Oh, Their Eyes Were Watching God we just talked about my love for that book. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Tiffany says, I'd suggest Tony's Bluest Eye. It's still intense because she's intense, but it's a good read. Okay. I just took someone else's recommendation, so let me write it in my later Bluest Eye. And I'll put this in a Storygraph later. Thank you. And when I put books that are recommended to me in Storygraph, you know what I do? I tag them with the person who recommends them. So if it's good or bad, I will come back and tell you. Cat Pasta is still on my TBR is N.K. Jemisin. Only the shorts. And I've watched a dozen of her talks on the tube, but I still have not read any of her books, but got one on Kindle. Audie. Okay. I think I've only read the first of her second series, the 5th season, and I liked it. I have a thing with series. I never finish series, which is why the Her Kid prompt is so hard for me. And because she had 2 that were going at the same time. And the shorts. I can't remember which one you're talking about there, but let me know if you have a title. Oh, okay. I do want to read How Long Till Black History Month. Is that edited by N.K. Jemisin? That could be it. I can picture the cover, but not the title, the editor's name. It's not available here for some reason. It was on my wish list for quite a while. Yes. So here, yes, N.K. Jemisin. Thank you. I just didn't remember that it was her. Paperback $18.59, ebook $11.99 on Bookshop, which is where I look for first short stories. Yes. Okay. You know what I was thinking of is The City We Became. Someone just highlighted that. It might also be Mr. Sosotris, but they just highlighted that, and I think that is N.K. Jemisin as well. So yeah, you're right. She's got a couple of great short story collections. Well done. Okay, so famous names. I've got a recommendation. I've got a buddy read. And yes, these ones I did know of before. So yes, Catpaw has City We Became. Okay. Have you read it? Is it good? Let us know. And I'll take this down to move on to the next section. So I've done favorites to recommend, and I've done famous ones that I haven't read to get some of your input. And the next section is recent ones. And then I'll talk about like how I read more Black authors. Recent names. I looked up some of these to see if I could fit them into Readathon possibilities. Trouble of the Saints by Elia Dawn Johnson. This looked delectable. It's historical fantasy. And so there's magic. There's a love story. Deeply American saga. So it's set in Harlem, and there's like things from their past that come back, and it just sounded very good. This is a debut, so definitely been on my shelf for too long, unread. But these are books that are like recent novels, debuts, names are not as famous. Like if you're on BookTube and you're looking for diverse books, you've probably heard of them, but like I haven't read them yet. So if you've got a dialed in line to which ones of these I should read, let me know. Micaiah Johnson, The Space Between Worlds. So this is a BookTuber recommendation. It's sci-fi, as you could probably tell from the cool cover. And I don't normally read a lot of sci-fi. I've tried to put this on TBRs a couple times, and it just like hasn't grabbed me. I need an excuse. So someone who wants to read some sci-fi, some futuristic, let's see, what's it about? An outsider who can travel between worlds discovers a secret that threatens her new home and her fragile place in it, and a stunning sci-fi debut, etc., etc. So very excited about this, but like I need a reason. Why now? Micaiah Johnson doing well. I looked up some of these people last night on my phone and was trying to see like what they've been doing since, and a lot of them are not very current on social media, and that's totally fair. Like social media is a shit show at the moment. But I hope these authors are doing well and working on their next works. So this is a very recent, The Mayor of Maxwell Street, written by Avery Cunningham. She was on Good Morning America or Good Morning Britain, maybe one of the two. And this is about Chicago and the Black elite and how they're dealing with politics of the day. The year is 1921. America is burning. A fire of vice and virtue rages on every shore, with Chicago at its beating heart. So she said The Great Gatsby was sort of a inspiration for a lot of the themes and stuff in this book. So it's really neat cover. Just found that in the thrift store as a review copy. So yeah. Didn't hear about it anywhere else until I looked it up. Nick Stone. Have not read Nick Stone. Very famous. They've already got a third book. Dear Martin Luther King. So kid writes a letter to MLK. Dear Justice. And this is sort of like the sequel. And now there's a third book that has just come out. They're young adult, like younger young adult. And someone sent me these from BookTube because I hadn't read them. And it was very nice of them. And then I still haven't read them. So I need an occasion, apparently. They're short. They would be good to plug into any readathon. Nick Stone, tell me your thoughts, audience. Attica Locke, crime fiction. I tried to shoehorn this into my book club, and it didn't work because people had already read it. But The Cutting Season is the first one I got from Attica Locke. It's not the first in her mystery series, but talented crime fiction writer. I just need to be in the mood. Often, like, I'll work away on mystery series, but not other kinds of series. I don't know. It's weird in here. It's twisting and turning. I don't know. Definitely want to read that one. Vanessa Riley, Queen of Exiles. So this is a second sort of book in a series. Is it? Sort of. Okay, so she's talking about a slightly different setting and era, but similar type historical fiction. So I've had Vanessa Riley on the channel. She's lovely. I read the first book of this series, which is about She has a funny nickname, and she has many names throughout the story of her life, but an actual historical figure in the Caribbean who was very instrumental in the history of Demerara. And I recognize the voice in my head is no, not Adenrale. Yeah, it is Adenrale Ojo. The actress from Bridgerton narrated this book by Vanessa Riley, and so I hear her voice speaking of that island. But this is her next book, not her latest book, and it's about Haiti's Queen Marie-Louise Queen David, who escaped a coup in Haiti to set up her own royal court in Italy during the Regency era, becoming a popular member of Royal European Society. So different tales than you would expect, different historical eras than you know about, which is my jam, which I love hearing about. And I got it. I found another like proof copy. I had a gold mine of like someone got rid of all their arcs, and so I picked them all up. But yeah, definitely love Vanessa. We've got another, like, have had this one way too long. This is one of the ones that sat for a long time. It's called Conjure Woman by Afia Atakora. It's a debut novel, and they've got other stuff coming out, but haven't since 2020. So debut novel in a pandemic may have affected the publishing schedule. Conjure woman is a term for people who were working medicines and like hedge witch stuff. So things that had to do with gardens and plants and traditional knowledge, but also like venturing into magic and spiritualism and sort of blurring the boundary between the two. That's why Conjure woman is a little bit about magic. And the setting is 1867, freedom time. 1854, slavery time. So dual timelines based on like the other side of the war, Civil War. Sounded really good. Hold on a second. B2B. We've got the first work by Morgan Jerkins. This will be my undoing, which is more of a memoir. I read her book about being an activist, which is a different memoir. And she's young. She's, I think, younger than I am, but she's had multiple memoirs, which I try not to hold against her. But the second one was really good. I felt it was very good at exposing power dynamics and power mapping in a specific Oakland neighborhood where she worked for an organization like urban planning. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I picked this up, which is her earlier work, and just haven't read it. So love the author already, but got another one of their works and haven't read it yet, but definitely recommend her work to you. I haven't read any of her fiction. Then we've got Rita Woods, who is another historical fiction author I picked up because of historical fiction, Historical Novel Society. The book is called Remembrance. Voodoo kept her safe. Now it may destroy her. So I think this is another one towing the line between like magical realism of a type and like historical accuracy. 1791 in Haiti, 1857 in New Orleans, present day. So I think it's a weaving of three different storylines. And maybe I need to read Kindred before I read these, because these are obviously in that like legacy. So we'll see. Maybe that would be a good pairing. Two more in this category. Recent. Piper Hughley is By Her Own Design, a novel of a real historical figure. Anne Lowe, fashion designer to the social register. So I think this is like 50s, 60s setting and talking about like a real person, but fictionalizing some scenes of her life. And it's someone who is a designer to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis is the one that sticks out of my mind, but 1953 New York City, 1916 Tampa. Oh, so this is dual timeline too. I didn't realize that. But I thought it'd be neat to do a little like costume history at the same time as diverse author with a different take on the 50s and like Jackie Kennedy. When I flip through and see different scenes, it's like, oh, there's some sharpness in this book, I'll say. So I think it'll be like a very page turning type read. Just haven't picked it up yet. Haven't had this one that long, so don't beat myself up. And then why haven't I read this one, folks. And Dee Dee may chastise me because I think she really liked this one. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. This is Honoré Fanon Jeffers' Tome of Legend. And I think I got this at the Barnes & Noble like hardcover sale when they were 50% off that first year, because I was waiting, and then I thought, this is my opportunity. So yeah, sweeping family epic chunker. So we've got some in the South, we've got some in the North. I think we've got like different characters. I don't know if they meet. I don't know. It's a mystery to me. I was just basically going off of interviews with her that we had on A Mighty Blaze. So I haven't read it yet. Just hearsay. What are your thoughts? She's a doctor. She's an academic. She wrote a fiction like masterpiece. So very, very, I don't know, humbling experience to like put that forward as an academic, I would think. All right, let me catch up with the chat. Oh boy. Yes. Okay. I think we left off with that for City We Became. Tiffany says, I also want to read the Blackout Whiteout duo. It's short stories with a collection of Black authors. Is that another N.K. Jemisin one? That sounds fun. Blackout Whiteout. I don't know about that one. Okay. Well, if you want to propose someone else in the chat, I don't know, like maybe we could facilitate some other buddy reads. That'd be fun. Jocelyn says, I love sci-fi. Cat Paw says, I got that one. Micaiah Johnson. All right. Excellent. If you want to do a buddy read, Cat Paw, let me know. It's, I think, going to be a fast-paced one, so maybe just 1 month will be enough for it. Tiffany says, when I was visiting my aunt last year, they had a Black author come talk to them about his story set in Colorado that made me think of you, because I think it was a little historical. Interesting. I don't know of any historical fiction for like Black authors in Colorado. I know the White Lady Romance in Colorado. That's about it. Oh. Tiffany says, I need to look up the names so I can get it to you. Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Catpaw says, I'd really love if you listed the books you talk about in the show notes. I will do. I will do. And I'll leave notes to them all. I just knew that today there was going to be, I've had these books in piles for like 3 weeks because I wanted to talk about them. But with each of the guests, I couldn't figure out a way to like talk about the books while also featuring them. So because Chelsea is not here today, she is facilitating the airing of all the books. But I knew I needed to present it in a coherent way. So it took all of my mental processes to like figure that shit out. And so I didn't have time to do more of the show notes. I'll do it after though, Catpaw, definitely. Ugh. I just, you know, that feeling of when you do a presentation and it didn't go as well as you wanted because like your thoughts were all over the place. I didn't want that to be the case here because it's an important topic that I want people to connect with. So I wanted to make sure there was a flow. So that is the recent books. And I think I'm caught up with the chat. So Tiffany is saying the book is They Can't Take Your Name by Robert Justice. Okay, let me write that one down too. Talking to authors with a book club is like the coolest. I've never been on the author end of that, but like I dream someday. Someday I'll get asked. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Tiffany says, love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois is a good book, but yes, it is long. Oh, I don't think I finished it. Oh no. Okay. Tiffany has an Amazon link. That is the Whiteout book. Okay, I will star that and go back. I think it's more romance. Blackout Whiteout. Okay. All right. There are a lot of romance books on the Black Authortuber Readathon spreadsheet, which is wonderful. And so again, the Readathon is still ongoing. You have a week and change left. I won't be doing the giveaway drawing until March 7th. So you have until then to pick a book, read a book, and leave your name and link in the spreadsheet, which is pinned at the top of the chat. Tiffany's books are on there, and any Tiffany book works, you know? So yeah. Okay, so recent, and now I talk about what helped me read this many great Black authored books. So there's 4 points, 3 points really, and then one tag along that's a teaser. So number 1, subscribe to Black Booktubers. Chelsea doesn't do a whole lot of book reviewing, but you do get reviews on her channel because on her writing sprints, actually, people will read and they'll drop recs in the chat all the time, which is great. But if you subscribe to Black Booktubers, that means that you're getting the benefit of their like different filtering mechanisms, and you're also supporting their content creation. So I love that as a vehicle for expanding or diversifying your shelf. So that is the first thing that I would recommend. And I thought, like, how do I incorporate Black booktubers? But I'm highlighting Black authortubers, and there's not much that do both. So, like, I thought about this several weeks ago, and I couldn't really resolve one readathon for both. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do another readathon month. I thought about doing it in October because that's Black History Month for the UK. But then, like, people were saying with Black History Months, it's weird when people do it who are not in the country, and that sort of felt off and bad to some of the Black booktubers that I was following. So I figured I would just sit out and figure out how I can support them in other ways. And one of those ways is by saying, subscribe to Black booktubers. You can search, you can find them, you can see them on your screen. Just do it. You'll get better recommendations that way than listening to me. Number 2 tip on how to read more great Black authored books is check out multiple diversify your shelf lists. So this month, it's a bonanza for all the diverse shelf recommendations. Now, one thing that Black booktubers complain about is that they're all the same books, and that white booktubers in particular will do a read diverse books video for the month, for the readathon, what have you, and just mention the same names that everyone's heard of, which I can understand can be frustrating. Every time I see certain booktubers talking about historical fiction, often the same names come up, and I go, yeah, there's more people in historical fiction than like the big names. So I get it, and like I'm trying to give people more options, get them a little taste of different names so you can try them. That's what the Black Authortuber Readathon is for. And third tip is incorporate into your other book goals the diversity thing. So I had for several years a reading tracker that I borrowed from Melissa. And it's just a spreadsheet that was like, I have these 6 goals. I'm trying to prioritize different things and like hit all these markers per month. And one of them was writers of color. And so like, if you just work it into everything, then it's not a separate thing that is to be checked off, if that makes sense. So I had a reading tracker. I don't really use it anymore because like it's kind of a basic practice. I don't need to do different formats, different like writers of color, and it's sort of baked in now. Indie books, books I own, like it's always in my mind. So it's accomplished its goal. I don't need to do that anymore. Spreadsheets. We don't like spreadsheets. But other book goals. So if you were reading on BookTube and you have a readathon, or, you know, you have something that's like, read what you own. Do you have a book by a Black author that you haven't read yet? Maybe you're like me and you have like 30. Like, that's great. So make it part of the weekend readathon when you're reading books you own. If you're looking at Climathon, which is a readathon that I'm co-hosting and takes a whole year and has like 12 different prompts, then pick an author of color for any one or more of those prompts. Like, think about how your reading goals or other goals in your life can be intersectional and accomplish more than one thing. That's all I'm saying. So incorporate reading Black authors into other reading goals, and hopefully like it'll get baked in as you practice doing that more. Herkyed, one of the ones I mentioned, and Stephanie is actually sprinting right now at the channel QWordy. She is hosting the hardest readathon challenge you'll ever do, her kid. And she's got lots of focus on indie books because she's an indie author like myself, as well as I would call it pride recs. So things that you would search out if you're looking for diversity in sexual orientation and gender identity specifically. So rainbow challenge and rainbow covers and, all these different things. It's great. She doesn't go into things that are racially diverse because that's not her challenge. And so I would say I love the challenge. It's got like 82 prompts. It's very difficult. But what would make it even more fun is if you put Black authors into some of those because you own them or they're also on the rainbow spectrum or et cetera, et cetera. So just incorporate, just like shuffle the deck and incorporate, bake it in. Is that enough mixed metaphors for you? I think my job here is done. And then the final tip, the fourth, that's just sort of a teaser, is ask your libraries. So I'm going to go more in depth in this in another week or so. But in last year, November-ish, I discovered that my library system, Multnomah County, has a resource like where you can ask them for recommendations. It's not AI. It's an actual librarian who looks at your input and anything you give them, and then does some research, trawls their memory and their databases of expertise, and gets back to you with like current reads, classic reads, diverse reads, whatever you're looking for. And I did this in November and it was amazing. And I've been looking for an opportunity to slot in like another test run of this. And I think I'm going to do it in a week and a half. So this is my like little teaser. Ask your library system, because when I asked mine, they had some dope resources. And I know I shouldn't use that word. It sounds silly coming out of my mouth, but here we are. I needed that break. Leslie stepped away. She's going to watch with the replay. Thank you, Leslie. Tiffany says, I would add another tip of checking with your, so she got there before I did. Check with your local libraries and bookstores, because the more you ask for them, the more that will bring them to the area. Yes, that is a great point. So it's actually pulling demand and pushing supply, or vice versa, whichever, which is great, which is a great point. And Mojo says to Tiffany, yes, 100%. I actually take at least 10 of my books to the libraries in St. Augustine and Palm Coast when we fly back. Ooh, that's carrying some heavy loads on the flights. Good on ya. Thank you, Mojo, for your service. Yeah, I love that too. Dope. Dope for the dope. Okay. So those are my tips, and that is how I would say, as a person who didn't grow up in a community that was very diverse at all, how I've been able to learn more through reading nonfiction, through subscribing to Black Booktuber channels, through asking my local library, to checking out lists and like putting them on my wish list and TBRs, so like put them in my ecosystem and incorporate them into other reading goals. So there you go. Recent. And now we have the final category, which is deep cuts. Okay, the deep cuts, the backlist that you didn't know you needed to read. So this is my final stack of unread books. And you may not have heard of any of these, and that's fine. But this is my eclectic, not acerbic. What's the word I'm looking for? Esoteric. Eclectic and esoteric list that you may not have heard of, but are on my shelf. And maybe you would like to read them too. Begin Again is a book by Eddie S. Glaude Jr. James Baldwin's America and its urgent lessons for our own. Ugh. So I was so excited to get a copy of this because acerbic observations by James Baldwin notwithstanding, I love a person who can see that in history, it looked a lot then like it does now. So maybe we should learn something about the history to give us tools to combat that shit today. And I love it. So bonus, we're going to be looking at James Baldwin's observations to help us with tools for today. So I really like that. And I just haven't picked it up. I don't know why. It's a gem. I really want to. So Eddie Glaude Jr. Whimsical pickup a long time ago and never got to it. I put it on my list for last year for something. For French, based on something Dee Dee was doing. Black Girl in Paris. Oh, the Olympics. Wow, that was a year and a half ago. Was it last year or was it a year? No, it was last year. Black Girl in Paris because the Olympics were in Paris. The author is Shay Youngblood, and she's written some other books, so it's not her debut. But like I saw this and I thought, well, that's cool. What's this about? She's smoking a joint. So like it was one of those things where like it's sort of related because I love Paris, but it's not related if it's about someone doing drugs. So like I'm gonna see if that can bring me halfway across the bridge so I can like get anything. But I haven't picked it up. Like it's a cool cover. She's got butterflies in her hair, for hair, but I haven't picked it up. So I don't know. I should either read these or pass them on, right? Shay Youngblood. Have you heard of them? The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. Junota Petrus. YA novel. Like, look at that sweet, sweet cover. I think this will be a book for when I'm sick. It feels like a good comfort read of like YA, but it's going to be a happy ever after. I don't know. That name is not a one that I've seen come up. Junota Petrus. I've definitely heard the title talked about more, but not the author. So hopefully they're still around and like working on something new. Okay, this is the classic, but it is a backlist. So it goes in the deep cuts territory, which is Ernest Gaines and his novel, The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, which is fiction, but an inspiring story of a woman's courageous battle for freedom. So it's one of those books that is set in the time after slavery and features someone whose memory goes back to the time before when there was slavery. And so it's like a valuable passing on of knowledge and valuing of elder wisdom. So I thought it would be really neat. And I just haven't, this has been on the shelf for a long time. I just haven't picked it up. Slap my wrist. Okay. This one came off my dad's office shelf. This is a vintage book. You can tell it's got the red edges. It's called The Negro Revolt by Louis E. Lomax, who I think is a sociology researcher. And this is one of those times where I'm like, it's going to be weird and icky to try to read someone from the early 60s writing about like racial divide, politics, history, and that kind of stuff. So it's one of those, what do I? In this outspoken, important book, an award-winning, and they say Negro writer explains the history behind freedom riders, sit-ins, prayer marches, the development and meaning of the racial protests sweeping America today. And the year is 1962. And it caught my eye because it's Lomax, and it's not the person who did the recordings of folk music, but like, is it related? I don't know. But it seemed like an important book, kind of like reading W.E. Du Bois from the 30s or Charles Chestnut's fiction, like a point on the continuum. I don't know if I'll connect with it, but I want to read it just to see. So deep cuts, folks. We're deep cuts. So this is actually a commercial book, a popular commercial book written by an academic. It's Cosmopolitanism by Kwame Anthony Appiah. Ethics in a World of Strangers. And so when I think about history and white supremacy and the beginning of slavery and what white people thought they were doing, it kind of comes back to trade and, empire, and like how someone somewhere dreamed up this power imbalance based on colorism and racism and exploited it to the max, and that's why we're here today. So I'm like, what is the take? And I've heard mixed things about the author, but like I thought he would be an interesting one to try. He was at Princeton, and it's ethics, and I don't normally do well with ethics discussions, but maybe someone can hold my hand through that one. It should be pretty easy to obtain, not like some of the others, because like I said, it was commercial. Then we've got Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larson. So classic May of the Moderns author. And I read Passing. I haven't seen the adaptation, but I didn't read Quicksand. So I should get on that. Quicksand, deep cut, not the one that got adapted. And then finally in this category is Jean Reese. So I think I've read 2 of these now. Voyage in the Dark and Quartet. Or, see, I don't remember which one. It's an omnibus. So definitely Voyage in the Dark. And maybe After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie instead, because I got that from the library before. But Jean Reese, popular classic celebrated Caribbean writer and 1920s, 1930s. Voyage in the Dark, so-so experience, but I want to try her again to see like if the Wide Sargasso Sea is her response to Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre and how it interacts and frames the Caribbean. And I'm like, oh, I know I need to read that, which is why I still have it. Sorry, Bean. So yeah, that is the deep cuts category. So those are like the, I don't know, 40 or so books I have on the shelf, physical copies of that are unread, and I need to pick and I need to incorporate them, bake them in. I mean, I've got others, but yeah, ebooks, audiobooks, more recent. These are the ones that I've got on my shelves. So yeah, I'll take your suggestions into consideration there. But that wraps us up. I would just close with why. So I said a little bit about the how, about how we incorporate Black authors' books more into our reading, but I'll close with the why, which is dovetailing with the truth and reconciliation aim of the channel for this year. And that is that the last couple climate books I've been reading make the very important point that you cannot use technology to save the world without addressing the structures of inequality that we have set up in capitalism currently, because the systems of oppression and exploitation that exploit both people and their labor and the earth and its materials are what got us into this mess. So they're not going to get us out. The incentives are wrong, and the externalities are what got us here. So that same system is not going to work. So whether it's climate or it's racism, they are bound together. So we all need to do better to survive the climate apocalypse. Apocalypse is my point. And I hope that makes sense. If you don't understand that, I will have many more videos talking about that point. So like, hopefully that will help elucidate this, and this will help elucidate, why I'm working on climate so much. So with that, this has been a lovely Sunday stream to celebrate Chelsea CM Lockhart and her channel and her books. I will be happily finishing her first one and recommend the new series she started, which is like Romance in Space and Magic in the Melanin, which is a lovely collaboration. And what else? We have Wednesday wrap up. So my next stream will be on Wednesday, where I will have some fantasy and some historical and some more Black authors to talk about. And then Friday, we will have our final Friday productivity stream. Yeah. And then the next week, the Readathon update, and first Friday for March will be the Black Authortuber Readathon giveaway. So just to say, you can still join in. Please join in. It's pinned at the top of the chat, and it should be in the description as well. The link to the spreadsheet. You have lots of Black Authortubers channels and books to choose from, or you can add more, because then we all get to know more Black Authortubers, which is the goal for the month. And then you'll be set up to read diversely the whole live long year, which is great. So Mojo says, I send books to my son's house in Palm Coast. I don't know where that is. Is that Florida? Sounds like Florida. Tiffany says the Jane Pittman is a good book and even has a decent movie adaptation. Oh, okay. I read another of Ernest Gaines' books that was a little slower. It was something old men, something. And it was okay, but I don't think I was grasping it enough. I think this one might be more impactful for me. And then Mojo says, I'm glad I can catch at least Sunday's lives before bed. Sweet. Yes, south of St. Augustine. Okay, Florida, Palm Coast. Nice. Nice. That is some hefty shipping. So it's either hefty schlepping or hefty shipping. Putting in the work. Yeah. So thank you all for your recommendations, for watching, for supporting, for subscribing to my lovely Black Authortuber friends and the folks who were shouted out this month, but also others that you see when you search. So Callie Browning, Deidre-Annanderson, Tiffany Russell, and CM Lockhart. So yes, check them out, read their books, review them, help a person out, and yeah, diversify that shelf. Make the world a better place. That is it for us today. Thank you for sticking with me for so long on this one. I have a lot of Black authored books, and it is a wealth of possibilities, and I look forward to reading them. So just tell me which to get started first. All right, everyone, take care and happy reading.